Hi guys, so welcome back to the final and third lecture of CF. So sorry it took a little bit of time to record this lecture, but to be honest, even I had some problems when I after the class, so I didn't understand a few things, so I had to do some studying on my own so that I could teach you guys. So so it's everyone is clueless, so don't worry, you're not alone. Okay. Um, So firstly, before I start, I'll just correct one thing that I said in the last lecture. So in the last lecture that I uploaded, I'd said that out of these two PDFs, Sir has only done this one. But I also realized that this one Sir has covered in the this one CF1 previous intro. So in this lecture, he has covered this part: efficient market hypothesis and risk and return. So this one I'll cover in this lecture also, but right at the end of the lecture, because it's not that much. I'll try and summarize whatever he said. If you want to do a detailed something reading on that, you can watch this video. He has covered this part in the video. Okay, and this part I've already covered in the first lecture, and I'll continue in with this PDF only. Okay, and as I mentioned in the earlier recording that you should go before the exam, you should also read through this document that Mansi ma'am has shared. Okay, let's quickly get started. Let me share the PDFs. Okay, I think it's visible. Okay, class 3, the topics that we're going to cover in this lecture will be risk premium per unit, portfolio and what is market portfolio, beta and the capital asset pricing model, and CML, SML, and efficient frontier. And obviously, at the end of that of this recording, I'll also share about what is efficient and efficient market hypothesis and those things that was covered in the pre-recording. Okay, so before we go into the lecture, we should always revise what we were talking about in the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we learned that we were learning about what required rate of return is. Okay, so RRRE is calculated as RF, which is the risk-free rate plus risk premium. So risk-free rate is the rate at which is the return that a risk-free asset will generate, and adding to that, you'll get some premium because you're taking some risk. Now, why are you calculating RRR? So if you remember Teresa's portion, he has taught something called discounting. Now, in discounting, if you remember this formula, P0, that is the price at the year 0. You remember he had taught a timeline where today it's discounting today. So today when we are standing, it's P0. D1 is the dividend that we're going to receive at the end of year 1. So we take that. Suppose 18 is the dividend that we're going to receive at the end of year 1. We discount that on the basis of a discounting rate. That discounting rate is the RRRE minus growth. So growth is the rate of increase in the discount. And so we know that the company is growing at, let's say, CAGR of 5.2. So that is 5.2 is the growth rate. This is not 8, this is G. Okay, and whatever will be the required rate of return for investor, based on that the price will be determined. Okay, if for example I'm a investor whose required rate of return is 10%, then the price for me will be higher. If my required rate of return is 15%, then the price will not be as high. Got it? So you can just factor in the required rate of return here, and based on that we'll get the price. Got it? Now let's get started. This P0 that will be calculated using this would be the should be price of that asset, of that share, let's say. So this is how you kind of evaluate whether the price is overpriced or underpriced in the market. So that is the entire purpose of this capital asset pricing model. So you see, we are calculating the R, which is the required rate of return, but we call it as a CAPM because it's a pricing model where you put this R and you get the price. 1 second, just a light. Okay. Now, as we said that RRRE is equal to risk-free rate plus risk premium. This we have done in the last class itself. Today, what we are going to do is calculate what risk premium is. So risk premium for any asset, let's say asset I. So RPI would be equal to risk of I into risk premium per unit. Now this risk premium per unit should be the same for all firms across the entire market. All firms should have the same risk premium per unit. The risk will change. Okay, so the risk, how do you calculate this risk? The risk is equal to the standard deviation of I with respect to the portfolio that the investor is holding. So in the last class, if you remember, we said that the risk of an asset is the contribution of that asset to the risk of the portfolio. So for an investor, so this will be different for every person. So for example, Atin, Anurag and Shagun ka N cut off, sorry Shagun, the N got cut off. Different investors will have a different portfolio. For example, Atin might be a risky investor. He might have invested a lot of money in the equity share market and a little bit of money in the bond market and something. Anurag might have invested a lot in maybe Bitcoin. Shagun might have invested a lot in the bond market. So every investor has a different portfolio, and based on that portfolio and the standard deviation of that asset for that portfolio. So for example, let's say one share of Reliance will have a different standard deviation with the portfolio that Atin holds, the portfolio that Anurag holds, and portfolio that Shagun holds. Okay, and the risk premium for that portfolio per unit, we multiplied with the risk premium per unit. Okay, so that's how we get RP1. Now, this is theoretical. This entire model is based on the CAPM model, which is a Nobel Prize winning model, where he said the author of this CAPM model, he said that every person will hold the same portfolio. So I'll get to that. Let's just understand what a portfolio is. Now, a portfolio is a collection of financial instruments or investments which could contain something like stock, bond, art, commodities, cash, real estate, mutual fund. It can be any asset. Okay, so even for example, some people invest in art. Okay, millions of dollars in art, something. So that's also an asset. That's also investment. Some people buy Rolex watches as an investment. So commodities could be gold, crude, aluminum. Anything can be commodity. Stock, bond, mutual fund, real estate is a big asset. So any collection of different assets is called a portfolio of assets. If you invest in one share, that is a share. But as soon as you invest in a multiple number of portfolio of let's say bond share, multiple shares of India and US, that is called a portfolio. Now any collection of financial investments is called a portfolio. Now every asset in that portfolio has a different weight, and this weight is based on the market value of that asset. How do you calculate the weight? So for example, I have asset 1. How do you calculate the weight of that asset 1? Market value of asset 1 divided by the sum of market value of the entire portfolio. Now it's important to note here that it's the market value and not the cost of the asset. The cost of the asset, so if, for example, I have a house in Kolkata which was valued at 40 lakhs when I bought it, but today that house is valued at 70 lakhs. So when I'm calculating my portfolio, the weight of that house should be 70 lakhs divided by my entire portfolio, not 40 lakhs. Similarly, if I have bought shares of Reliance, let's say 10 years ago, that I don't need to calculate it at that cost. I need to calculate the value of Reliance's share today. So the market value of that share divided by the sum of market value of the entire portfolio. That will give you the weight of the entire portfolio, weight of that asset in that portfolio. Now, if you add all the weights up, that will total to 1, because the sum of the, so it's market value of asset 1 plus 2, so everything should add up to 1. Okay, now what the CAPM model says is that there's a market portfolio. Again, this is a very theoretical concept. So it says that the market portfolio is a portfolio of all kinds of investments that are possible. So it can include stocks in India, stocks in US, stocks in Australia, bonds, gold, real estate, all kinds of assets that are possible. You make a bundle of those assets and calculate the weight of each asset in the based on the market presence. Okay, this ideal portfolio would be completely diversified, because if you remember in the last video I talked about systematic and unsystematic risk. Systematic risk was the risk that affected all investments. Okay, so like COVID is a systematic risk because it affects all industries, all countries, so it's a systematic risk. Whereas an unsystematic risk would be a, let's say, fall in crude price. It's an unsystematic risk because it affects let's say the oil and gas sector or airline sector, but it does not affect maybe banking. Okay, so that is an unsystematic risk. But because my portfolio is made up of all possible assets, it's a completely diversified portfolio where there's no unsystematic risk, but there is a systematic risk, because if something like COVID happens, it will affect everything. So systematic risk will always be there. It cannot be diversified. Okay, but unsystematic risk will be eliminated. So it's a theoretical concept. One of the drawbacks is of this concept is that it's impossible to create such a portfolio with the given weights that like fixed weights or something. But it's for the CAPM model to determine the RM, we need to create this market portfolio. Don't worry, the figures of RM will be given to you. Don't have to even calculate what the portfolio is. So don't worry about the numericals part, but just understand it's a theoretical bundle of investments, and it's said that every investor out there, he will be holding this ideal portfolio. Okay, now just to give you an idea, I made an Excel sheet where I've taken, so obviously it's not possible to make a bundle of all the shares that are out there. So I've taken the top, I think 100 shares that were there. So yeah, so these are the top 100 shares. You can see the names. I'll make it a little bigger. You can see the names here: Reliance, TCS, HDFC Bank. Now this is the price of the share, and this is the market capitalization share. And if you take the total of the market capitalization and you find a percentage, it comes to Reliance is 9%, TCS is 7%, HDFC is 5%. So basically what market portfolio, let's say that these are like, there are so many different stocks in the market. Let's say there were only these 100 stocks. So hypothetically what market portfolio is saying, that every investor will be holding, so every investor will have a portfolio. So let's say 1,000, if Rohan as an investor has 1,000 rupees invested in the stock market, I will have 90 rupees invested in Reliance, 70 rupees invested in TCS, 50 rupees invested in HDFC Bank, and so on. So every ideal investor should have will have a portfolio that contains this proportion of assets. But it does not really happen, because this is a market portfolio. So just like this just has shares. Now market portfolio will also have shares, bonds, gold, commodities, and everything. So based on that, you find this number. Now in class, sir has also given an example. I'll share that example as well. So I hope you got that point of what is a market portfolio. Okay. Now sir has said that let's say there are two investors, investor A and investor B. Investor A is a risk averse investor, less risk averse investor. So basically it takes a lot of risk. So he wants to invest $2,500, and because he's risk taking, he'll only invest 40% in risk-free assets and 60% in risky assets. Now out of the risky assets that he invests in, he will put this 5%, 7%, 4% in ABC respectively. So just it is 5%, 7%, and 4% not fixed. It's based on the market portfolio. Got it? So just like I showed right now, that Reliance has 9%. So basically, if he invests 1,500 rupees in stocks, he would have 9% share in Reliance. Similarly, if there is an investor B who is a little risk averse, so basically wants to play safe, he wants to invest $1,500. He plays safe, so he'll put 80% of his money in risk-free asset and 20% in risky investments. But what the model says that out of the 20% that he invests in the risky assets, 5%, so it's the same ratio, 5% he will invest in stock A. Got it? So this is what the market portfolio is. Now let's see what, so this is what we were talking about before I started the portfolio. This risk premium for asset 1 is equal to risk of I into risk premium per unit. Now coming back to this, what the model is saying is that risk RRR for any asset. So let's take asset I. So RRR for asset I will be equal to risk-free rate plus risk I. So that's a standard deviation I into risk premium per unit. Now earlier what we had done is I comma PF, so portfolio. Now this model is saying that every investor will have a market portfolio. So that's why I've written here I comma M. Yeah. So every investor will have the market portfolio, and now I have to determine the risk of that asset compared to the market portfolio. So RF plus standard deviation of I comma M multiplied by now risk premium. What is the meaning of risk premium? It is the premium that I'm giving, that I'm getting because I'm taking a risk. Now this risk premium, anyways, if I don't take any risk, I've gotten RF. Because I'm taking risk, I'm getting something in excess of RF. So that is my risk premium. So RM minus RF is the risk premium. Now here it's per unit. So for the per unit part, I put this standard deviation of M with respect to M. So M respect to M is basically the variance of M. So sigma square M, sigma M square. Okay. So now this formula, if I bring this here, this RF plus sigma IM divided by sigma square M into RM minus RF. Now this thing, this one is the covariance, this is the variance. Now this covariance by variance is called beta. Okay. Okay. So this entire equation of RRR equal to RF plus beta into RM minus RF. This entire equation, highlight this part. This entire equation, this is called the CAPM model. Now CAPM, capital asset pricing model. Why is it called a pricing model? Because based on the RRR, we'll put this in the equation and find the price. So that's why it's called pricing model. And the beta is covariance by variance. Okay, so I think for the exam, just remember this formula. You don't have to remember the entire derivation of the formula, but I've just listened to this once again. When if it's not clear, just listen to it once again. I don't think he'll ask for the derivation, but this formula is important. Okay. Okay, so now there is two kinds of risks. First is the sigma risk. Sigma risk is what? Sigma risk is basically for an asset I, sigma risk is standard deviation of I comma M, and for the market portfolio it's sigma square M. Now the difference here is that, let's say if I say that Indian Oil has a sigma risk of 10.2%, okay, it does not really show me anything. It obviously tells me that there's a possible variance of 10.2%, but does not give me a figure that I can relate to. So what we do is we divide this sigma IM by the market variance of the market portfolio. So for example, if you say that the variance of the market portfolio is 10 and this is 12. So if I divide 12 by 10 and I get 1.2, that is called the beta. So this divided by this gives me the beta. Now beta gives me a figure of comparison for one asset to another. So for example, if I take three stocks, so this one I found from moneycontrol.com that the beta of Indian Oil is 1.21, Reliance, beta of Reliance is 1.04, and beta of Asian Paints is 0.62. What this means is that every time the market goes up by 1%, Indian Oil goes up by 1.21%. If the market goes down by 1%, Indian Oil goes down by 1.21%. So the fluctuation is more than the market. Compared to Asian Paints, if market goes up by 1%, Asian Paints will go up by only 0.62%. But if the market goes down by 1%, Asian Paints will also go down by only 0.62%. So that is the volatility of the market is shown by the beta. So this thing, sigma risk, is called a non-standardized risk. Now what is a non-standardized risk? It's a risk that, let's say 12% is the sigma risk of Indian Oil. That does not tell me much. But when I give you a standardized risk compared to the market portfolio, that gives me a point of comparison that, okay, this is volatile. With 10.2%, you really don't understand if it's a volatile or not. Okay. Now this is, I hope this part of beta, what beta is clear. Generally, if you even search on Google for any the beta of any stock, you will get the beta of the stock. So that's called beta, and you multiply that with the RM minus RF. So when you multiply that with the RM minus RF, you get the market risk premium for that stock. You add it to the risk-free rate and you get the RRR for the stock. Right? Now, there are three concepts that I want to cover here. First is the capital market line. Capital market line is this line that shows that the portfolio. One second. Okay, so the capital market line is this line that starts from RF, and so basically it says that the capital market line shows the portfolios where the combination of RF and M will give the highest return for any level of risk. So you can see that on the x-axis there is risk, and on the y-axis there is return. So for if you don't take any risk, you will get this return at the level of RF. And the more risk you take, so if you get a higher risk, you'll get a higher return. If you take even more risk, you'll get a even higher return, and so on. So basically, it's saying that I'm an investor and I'm making a portfolio out of RF and market portfolio. Now, if I invest 0% in market portfolio and only invest everything in RF, I'll get this as the return at risk 0. And if I invest everything in market and nothing in the risk-free asset, then I'll get a higher return, but I'll have a high risk. So basically, this entire line shows all the portfolios where a combination of RF and RM will give the highest return for the for a given level of risk. Okay, that is called the capital market line. Now, what is the efficient frontier? Okay, so forget this capital market line for now. Efficient frontier is a line that starts. This was given by Harry Markowitz, who developed this modern portfolio theory, which is also very famous. So it's like capital market line, but it's also a famous theory, where he said that if you invest 100% of your money in bonds, you would get a lower return at, let's say, a very low risk. You'll get this point of return. Now, if you start investing more money in equity, because of diversification, your risk will go down. So for a bond, let's say the risk is maybe 3%. Now, because of diversification, that once you start, let's say at this point, you invest 20% in equity and 80% in bond. Because of that, a point will come where the risk will start to reduce and at a higher return. And then again, as the return starts to increase more and more, the risk will again start to increase. So you'll start from here, go to the left, and then go up. But at a point, it will come to this 100% equity is the point at which you're taking the most amount of risk for a maximum return. Okay, so this entire curve is called the efficient frontier, and everything, all kinds of investments that you can do will fall below the efficient frontier. So it's not possible to invest at a beyond this efficient frontier, because this is in an efficient market. So I'll tell you what an efficient market is at the end of this video. So if the market is efficient, you cannot invest in any portfolio that crosses this efficient frontier, which is that curve. Okay, anything that you invest in will fall below this curve or maximum on this curve. And now the most efficient portfolio is this portfolio which will cut at that. If you put the capital market line over that portfolio, it will be a tangential line, and the point at which it cuts, that point is called the market portfolio, and it will be the most efficient portfolio. Okay. Third theory was security market line. The security market line is a graphical representation of the CAPM equation. So you remember this equation, RRRE is equal to RF plus beta RM minus RF. Now, this CAPM equation is graphically represented like this. It's very similar looking to the capital market line, but the axis is different. So here on the axis is the risk and return. Here on the axis, you see beta and the expected return. So for a beta equal to 0 means that market goes up, but this does not move. Okay. So market goes up, this doesn't move. Market goes down, this doesn't move. So it's non-volatile. So it's risk-free. So that's why if you invest here, your return will be risk-free. If you invest in something that gives you as much return as the market, so like if beta is 1, that means that if beta is 1, if market moves 1%, this will also move 1%. If market moves 1% down, that asset will also move 1% down. So for that, beta is equal to 1, and for that I expect that I should get at least RM. Okay, so that's how basically what this curve shows, that you find out the beta of that stock. Now you put the beta. For example, Asian Paints, the beta was 0.62. Now I'll plot 0.62 over here and find out my expected return here. Whatever is the expected return, that is the amount of money that I want to get from that share. That is the minimum amount of money that I should get. So basically, if I invest in a stock which is greater than beta, maybe I expect to earn more than the return from the market. So that RM is the return from the market portfolio. Okay. Now finally, what is the how do we calculate the return from an asset? Which dividend, for example, return on asset in 2019 would be equal to dividend on that asset in 2019 plus change in price between 2019 and 2018 divided by the price in 2018. That equation will give me the return on that asset. Now, just to show the CAPM model in working, let's take two assets, asset A and asset B. Asset A has a beta of 1.3, asset B has a beta of 0.8. So remember, if it's 1.3, if 1%, 1.3%, 1% down, 1.3% down, okay, and beta of 0.8 similarly. Risk-free rate is 7%, and the return on the market portfolio minus return risk-free rate would be 9%. These are the things that are given to me. Based on this, if I put this in the CAPM equation, I can get return from asset A as 7. So RF plus beta into RM minus RF. You put this, you'll get for asset A, it will be 18.7. For asset B, it will be 14.2. Now this RF is based on a forward-looking data, that what is my potential risk-free rate in the next coming years. But this RF minus RM is based on historical data that I have earned over the past few years. Okay, not that relevant, but just because sir has mentioned, I also mentioned this here. But you can see that based on the beta, you got a different required rate of return. So higher the beta, the more the required rate of return that I want. Okay, so this is fitting into the security market line. If this is 1.3, so I should get 18.7. This is 0.8, so I should get 14.2. Okay. If it was 0, then I would have gotten what? If it was 0, I would got. If you put 0 over here, I would got the RF. So this, you can see this is fitting here. If the beta was 0, I would have gotten RF. Okay, so I found out the required rate of return for asset A and asset B. Now putting it in this price equation initially that I showed, P0 equal to D1 by RA minus G. If you put that here, and let's say the G is 8.2%, you can get the price as, for this asset, the price is 171.43, and for this asset it's 300, assuming that the dividend will both be paying a dividend of 18%. Okay. So this is how you calculate the pricing of that asset. Now, for example, this asset is priced at 171.43 in the market. So I based on this equation, I found that the price of that asset is 171.43, and right now it's trading in the market at 150. So I know the price should be 171, and in the market it's trading at 150. So I'll buy that share, so that I know it has to go up. So that's why this is where you use the CAPM equation. Again, just to prove that the CAPM equation is working, if the excess return is 18.7, so 18.7 was the return and 14.2 was the return. So excess return over the RF is 11.7 and 7.2. Divide that by beta and you will get this. In both cases, it's 9, which is basically showing that the entire CAPM equation is working and the market is efficient. Okay. I'll send this note, so don't worry if you didn't get it. Just watch it again and I'll send the notes. Now let's assume that I make a portfolio with A and B, where A has a beta of 1.3 and B has a beta of 0.8. If I make a portfolio with a weight of 40% and 60%, the weighted average, the beta of that portfolio would be the weighted average of betas of the individual stocks in the portfolio. For example, I put 40% in A, so 40% of 1.3 and 60% of 0.8 would add to beta of the portfolio as 1. Return from that portfolio would be equal to 18.7% into 40%. So return was in the earlier equations also we have seen that the return from the portfolio is equal to the weighted average of the returns. So each return from each stock, we put the weights of that. So W1 into mu1 plus W2 into mu2 dot 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 to get 16% as a return on that portfolio, and the beta of the portfolio would be 1. Now, what does beta of that portfolio mean? That market, it should have the same risk premium as the market. If you deduct the market premium, so market risk-free rate from the on this was 7%. So you see 16 minus 7 would again come to 9, which is same as here. So it's saying that even for a portfolio, the beta works. Got it? So this was what sir had covered in the last lecture. There are some topics like diversifiable, non-diversifiable, systematic, non-systematic, standardized, non-standardized, covariance, beta, correlation, risk premium per unit, capital market line, security market line, efficient frontier, and efficient capital market. So I take a screenshot of these. I have covered these in the last 3 videos, but I want you to just go to Investopedia and read about this. But like, what is a diversifiable, non-diversifiable risk, systematic, non-systematic risk, so that in case questions come, I expect that maybe he'll ask something around these things only. So I'll just quickly summarize, but I want you guys to like read on Investopedia about these concepts. So note it down, take a screenshot, whatever. So diversifiable risk is the risk that can be diversified. That means if you can, if you invest in like, you remember that example where I told you that if you invest in only one industry and then you invest in all industries, then you diversify the risk of the firm related risk, then the industry risks, then the country risk. And if you remember that from the last video, that is a diversifiable risk. And the risk, non-diversifiable risk, is the risk that is associated with all like every stock will have that risk. So that's a non-diversifiable risk. So if you make a portfolio of 2 stocks which is not perfectly positively correlated, then it's you are able to diversify the risk. Okay, you just Google these things, because if I start talking about this, will take a long time and the video will be longer. I suggest you like just read about this. It will be easier for you to structure answer based on that. Okay, now for the final part of the video, I'll talk about what efficient capital market is. So in the pre-recorded video, he mentioned there are 3 kinds of markets. One is a weak efficient market, one is a semi-strong market, and the strong market. A weak efficient market is one where you can easily find out the change in price based on historical data. For example, like let's say a sugarcane industry or any kind of industry where every time the cropping season happens, there's a change in the price. Now it's easy to find out the change in price based on the historical data. That is a weak form market. As an investor, I can predict what is going to happen in the market based on historical changes in the market that I've seen earlier. So that is a weak market. Semi-strong market is something where, let's say, every time the price of crude falls, which is a publicly available information, let's say every time the price of crude falls, the price of Indian oil starts rising. And every time the price of crude falls, let's say Indian Airlines starts rising, or Indigo's price starts rising. If that happens, that is called a semi-strong market, because based on publicly available information, you can kind of estimate what's going to happen in the stock market. And a strong strong efficient market would, you as an investor cannot predict what's going to happen in the market based on any public, private, or historical data that is available to you. Okay? So it's not possible to find out changes in prices. Ideally, all markets should be strong, efficient markets, so that it's not possible to find any loopholes where okay, the price is going to rise or fall. But I think most of the markets are semi-strong markets where based on the changes that are going on in the, so based on any news that happens, or maybe let's say there's a fire somewhere that will affect, or maybe there's a flooding in Odisha and some aluminum companies that in Odisha, so their prices will go down. So these are all semi-strong effects. Again, so for this part you can refer to sir's first PDF that he shared, and that has a more detailed thing. I'm just explaining to you what each type of market is. Even I mentioned it here, efficient capital market. You can read about it. Search for weak, semi-strong, and strong. So basically what happens, if it's a strong, efficient market, the price of that share will be priced fairly and based on all information available, and it will be priced fairly. So there's no opportunity for an investor to find a undervalued or overvalued stock. So ideally, every market should be strong market. Another thing that was covered in the PPT, in the PDF was this. So this is based off from US data. So that's why the inflation is 3.1. India, the inflation is much higher, I think around 6%. So inflation is 3.1%. Treasury bills gives you a return of 3.8. Government bonds gives you a return of 5.8. Long-term corporate bonds gives you 6.2. Large companies gives you 12.3, and so on. Okay. So the market risk premium is 5.8 minus treasury bills. So this treasury bills is something that we generally refer to as the risk-free rate. So how much premium are you getting for that? Is 2. Here is 2.4. So 6.2 minus 3.4, 3.8. 12.3 minus 3.8, so 8.5. So basically what shows that based on historical data, we can say that if your standard deviation of a stock, so the standard deviation of treasury bills is 3.1, 9.2, 8.5, 20.2, 32.9. So as you can see that the standard deviation is increasing. As the standard deviation is increasing, so is the mean. So the return is also increasing. So this is something that we also learned over here in the capital market line, that as the risk increases, the return also increases. So for example, the treasury bond would be here, a large corporate would be here, small companies would be here, because it's more risky, so you expect a higher return, and that's what happens generally based on historical data. So this is what was covered in the PDF. I'll stop sharing. Okay, so these were the points that were covered in the PDF and the third lecture. So I think I've covered everything that was supposed to be covered. If you, I'm not covered any numericals per se in the questions, but maybe if I'll try and see if there are some numericals that I can cover. Just try and watch all these 3 videos. I think this video might be a little longer. I think around 35 minutes. Watch it once at 1.5 or something before the exam. I think it will be sufficient. And also read the PDF that sir has uploaded in the Google Classroom, the last one where it's a document, I think. Read that, that should be good for revision. And if there are any questions or something, I'll make another video, but I don't know if, like what sir has mentioned is that he'll cover MCQ based questions, short answer based questions, and some numericals. So for the short answer based questions, the topics that I showed you, try and cover those through Investopedia, or just Google about them, so that if the question like that comes, you can write something. You can always refer to the past video or this video again, so that will help you structure the answer. And yeah, that's it for the CF thing. I think I'll not faff anymore, and best of luck for the exam. And yeah, thanks guys for watching. And again, if anyone else wants to make any videos, please make videos. Force your friends to make videos, so that we have some reference material for the other exams as well. See if I have covered. If you find any numericals, or if you know from your seniors or someone that okay, this kind of numericals might come, just let me know, and I'll make a video on that as well. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll upload this as soon as possible, and best of luck.